The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Skash, joined with Tulio Siragusa, and we've got a couple guests today. Today, we're diving into a topic that's at the heart of every successful movement, building a community. And we couldn't have better guests in this conversation than our own Maher and Andrew Montez, co-founders of the Awaken Radio Club.
Hello.
How's it going, guys? Their work focuses on fostering meaningful connections through music, storytelling, and art. Awaken Radio Club is more than just a community. It's a space for people to come together, awaken their potential, and support one another on their journeys. Tulio, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Ash and Andrew?
Yes, thanks, Stephen. Ash, it's good to have you, not as a host, but as a guest today. So you're in the hot seat with your co-founder, Andrew, there. So let's talk about you a little bit. Ash is a visionary leader with a passion for creative, inclusive, growth-oriented communities. You might know him as a marketer, but he's also a community builder. And he's joined by Andrew Montez, who is also an aspiring producer and techno DJ with a family legacy steeped in musical talent. He actually worked with EDM artist Skrillex and developed a love for producing music at a very early age. Together, they've built Awaken Radio Club. I love that name. It's very cool. And Awaken Radio Club is a dynamic platform where people from diverse backgrounds can connect, share, and grow through creative expression. Who knows? Maybe it'll grow into something else. Label, maybe. And anyway, Ash and Andrew, it's really an honor to have you both with us today. And to get us started, why don't we get you guys to share what inspired you to create Awaken Radio Club and how that journey's led you to the point where you are today.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you first of all for having us, Steve and Tulio. It's an honor to be here. So a little bit of the story of how Awaken all began. I think I think it's safe to share or fair to say that each person sharing their individual stories makes the most sense, because as this community has built, each person had their own perspective and angle that they brought in, which created a very inclusive community. So my story began with the fact that I had decided in 2023 that I wanted to do this music thing, and it happened. It stemmed from me having a family background of artists and musicians. My grandma was actually a performer in Iran. So towards the latter end of her life, as she was passing, we had our last conversation. And one of the things I shared with her was that, hey, Grandma, I want to do this music thing just like you did. Now, I had no concept of how I was going to approach this or how we were going to do it. The clocks hit 2024, and I just, go head deep into this. Now, as Andrew had mentioned earlier, there was a promotional company that was looking for DJs at the time. It was called Mad Events, and we found them on social media. I showed up to a couple of their events, and we ended up getting involved in what was originally a promotional community, but the individuals involved, well, at least some of the individuals involved, were there with intentions of becoming DJs themselves, producers, artists themselves. So from that process of being super involved in a community with the purpose of trying to DJ, I found that, one, there was multiple gatekeepers. It was super cutthroat. And the individuals within the community, which is something that's very common in LA, were always looking out for themselves and looking for ways where they could put themselves up and not others. So if there was ever an opportunity, it was like that person would jump on it, even if they had to step on someone else's shoulder or step on someone else to achieve that, they would do it. So it was interesting that we had an opportunity that opened up. It was essentially an open deck. This was the moment for the DJs to get what they wanted after spending maybe a month or two, helping this company promote itself and grow as a community. It was like, okay, when is it going to be our turn? Well, the opportunity came. It was an open deck over in downtown LA. We were told at the time that it was all going to be handled by the promotional company. We just have to send our mixes in and they'll get us all connected. It was one random person that said, hey, do you think we should reach out to the venue maybe to make sure our spots are locked in? Well, I first off thought that was silly. I'm like, hey, this is how you get in trouble, or this is how you get kicked out or blacklisted from a group. You're trying to step over people's, what's the word? You're trying to step over people's shoulders or step over people.
Go over their head, yeah.
Step over toes, correct. You're stepping on toes here, right? But when that person called that venue and they reported back that, hey, yeah, we need to contact them if we want a spot, I then took the liberty to go ahead and contact them. when I called them, they were like, hey, we have an hour and a half slot. That's 3 half-hour sets available. Would you like to take it for yourself? And it was at that moment where it was like, I could have been like, yep, I'm just going to take it. I've worked my butt off for this. I've shown my face and everything. But it was like, I was like, no, there are other DJs in the group that also would like this opportunity. So then I throw it back into the group. Hey, there are 3 slots available, or we can do a back-to-back-to-back, which means it's when a group of DJs get together and they play a slot together. And 2 other DJs had reached out. One was in Tulare, California. The other one was in LA, and I was based out of Orange County.
So Ash, just for a second, just to underline that. So it's kind of this pivotal moment. You could take whatever you wanted for yourself, right?
Yes.
But you were like, no, I'm going to be in service to others,
yes.
right? At this particular moment.
100%. That was it. It was like, hey, you know what? We've built this community. We have relationships with people and stuff. We all know what our goals are. So it's like, hey, I could use this moment for myself, or I could use this moment to bring others up, right? And just see what happens with that. So that's all it was. So we passed it on. When we had the conversation with the 2 other DJs, this idea of Awaken came up during that time. It was just a discussion between the 3 of us. Right now, at this point, Andrew Montez wasn't involved just yet. We had our open deck. We planned out our set list, the 3 of us, and we went into it. Right now, what was interesting about this whole story is that we didn't know each other up until that moment. We planned our set the night before, and it was all done on video call. Right? We had our set list planned. We go out there and we were playing on a deck. Well, at least I was about to play on a deck that I had never touched in my entire life. I was used to like the couple channels here, the little entry level, just the whole CDJ. And a similar situation with another DJ that was involved with us as well. But then there was the 3rd DJ who actually knew how to work the deck. So I had the music selection. We had a DJ that knew how to work the deck. And then we had our other DJ in there jumping in there every now and then, hyping things up. And ultimately, we ended up winning the contest. We won the open deck that night because it was a great set. We played at the end. The music selection was great. Everyone was dancing. We brought the most people, and it was awesome. And it was, I think, a couple of days after that event. I mean, we were on a high. We were like, hey, we were able to do this. We came together. We supported each other. And then I think maybe it was a week or maybe a few days afterwards, a new group chat gets created. And above it, it's titled, Get Fucking Gigs. And this is where Andrew Montez's story comes into how we grew.
Andrew, that's where you came into, was that was your post, right?
Yep, the Get Fucking Gigs, man. That's what we needed to do, and that's what I was going to make happen. So going off of what Ash said, you know, the music industry is insanely cutthroat. So I noticed that right from the get-go, trying to get in as a DJ, and I'm not going to lie, I am under the age of 21 too. So I already was not supposed to be at that venue. But I had went to a few events. I noticed just how they were running things, and you know, I didn't really like what I saw. So in turn, me and Ash decided we had to have a chat. We had a chat, and we decided that we were going to go forward with kind of building a community and seeing what we can do or what we can make happen. And so we built that community, and our main goal was to just not be cutthroat. We wanted to take that away from the music industry. We're trying to get rid of that as a whole, because as a small artist, it's already hard to get gigs. But when you have places that are relying on you to, you know, bring people for your first gig, or you need to do this, you need to do that, not everybody has the ability to do that. So we wanted to bring an all-inclusive community where these small artists can thrive and actually bring their talent to be showcased instead of just being in the dark.
Yeah, interesting. So how do you go about not being cutthroat? Like, what differentiates you from that?
So you can go ahead, Ash.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I would love to.
Okay. So what we do is we really just like to give everybody the opportunity. With our first events starting out, we offered it up to anybody. It's for anybody's taking. If you want to play, come show us what you have. And then from there, we'll talk about having you play more. You know, if you mess up the opportunity, that's not on us at that point, but we're giving you the opportunity, and that's what mattered.
So again, it's really being the service to the others in the group, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and really the big thing is supporting one another. We were showing that, hey, by being supportive, by supporting other people's success, encouraging other people to support each other, all of that is going to come back to you. So we were trying to prove a point. It's a culture shift, right? We're trying to say, hey, you know, instead of worrying about you getting yours, ask yourself, hey, what can I bring to this space? Hey, what could I do to support so-and-so DJ at their event or whatever they're trying to accomplish? And in doing so, we've created this environment where everyone has the same intentions. We're all trying to accomplish the same goals. And we're following this spiritual principle that we're all just here to help each other out, right? So in having the same intentions and then creating a manifestation space where everyone's helping each other out versus trying to, feel jealous for someone getting a gig or feeling like, hey, that person's succeeding and I'm not. I covet that, right? It's like, no. Be proud of that. Think to yourself, hey, if that person is able to accomplish that, no, we're going to further support them too. And that could also be you, right? But that was the environment of people coming in and asking themselves, hey, what can we do for this space and for others within the space? Knowing that in turn, it will all come back. But we're not really even thinking about that at that point. We're just contributing to the space, the community. And from that, it was very interesting because everybody started accomplishing their goals indirectly. Well, we can't say that, there were certain things that happened directly, but then there were things that were happening for other people indirectly. So it felt like we were creating this manifestation funnel where everyone involved, sharing love and encouraging one another. There was benefits, seeping down. Now, outside of all of that, people come to these events and they share that it's just a different vibe. Like everyone's a tad bit happier. And again, I think in the creative space, it is so competitive to get in there. Unless you have that awareness, unless you come in with that open heart that you're bringing love into the space versus trying to take from the space, you can sense that. You sense jealousy. You sense people feeling like, they're coveting others, or you sense people wanting to go in there and get their set in. And if they don't get their set in, it's a bad night for them. And so, and we've noticed that difference between those who've been a part of our community for quite some time versus those who are just entering in. When you come to people who have been a part of the community, they're very flexible. They're there to connect, network with one another. If things change up where a set, has to be shortened, they're not upset about it. But then you see the vice versa. You see the other side of it. People who haven't been acclimated in this environment and are coming in here, and they're just like, not getting with the program. If that makes sense.
Ash, how do you define community?
I think
think of that word.
I think for me, a community is a place where people come together, right, and are able to listen to one another. I think that's really all it is. And you need, a community doesn't have to be a group of people.
I like that. Wait, let's repeat that too. A place where you come together and you listen to one another, right?
That is really ultimately, from my perspective, what a community is. Yeah, we and all of that encompasses the supporting. It all falls under just us coming together and just listening. Actually taking some time and showing interest in one another's goals and accomplishments, or whatever people have within themselves that they want to accomplish. Just being able to say, hey, what is, everyone has a story they contribute, right? Everyone has that, right? And there hasn't been an environment like that where people could come in there openly feel like they could share those stories. And it's interesting too that everyone's stories are somewhat connected, right? We find relatability and so on.
I love that. Community, it comes from this idea of communing, right? So it's coming together. And that requires a lot of intentionality. So I'm curious, one key thing about communities like yours, as you had mentioned, is this idea of fostering storytelling, which builds trust and empathy and for everyone involved. How do you use storytelling and music to basically foster deeper connections among your members?
That's a great question. I think it's really, I'll be fully transparent. I don't think we've tapped into storytelling in terms of when other people from the outside look at what Awaken is all about, that we're still working towards that, right? But I think what has been very compelling for everyone involved is that there is a story being told in real time, right? And that story being told in real time is what has kept everyone engaged in something beautiful that they're seeing happen. When we're talking about shifting culture, that's a story that's happening within everyone internally, right? And something else that we have to touch on as well that's very fascinating is that we have this community where everyone's seeing each other as equals, right? But they all come from all shapes and sizes, all age demographics, different backgrounds, and so on. So, and each person has a story to tell, right? A story to share. So it's not so much what the Awaken story is, but it's more so every individual story that they contribute to this community. and everybody has this very interesting story. And all of those, there is no judgment in terms of, this person's story, he's 19 years old, therefore his story is less than the person who's 32, 35 years. No, it's like everybody has a story that's aligned and equal, no matter where you've come from.
I would argue that what you just shared is your story. That is the Awaken Radio story, is that it is a collection, a communion of many stories coming together where you can be heard and everyone is valuable. What are your thoughts, Andrew, on this?
I agree with you 100%. Going off of that, I think that is our story. The people that are a part of our community and make us who we are, that is our story. We've had artists come to us and express that this is what made them feel like they have a family. And, hearing that really touches you deep in your soul, because it's like just me and Ash with this small idea now are giving people the opportunity to feel like they're a part of something bigger and much more like spiritual. It gives you more of that connection with the people that you work with, because, what is a collective or a community when you're not able to connect with those people on a deeper level?
Yeah.
Essentially, is that what draws them in, do you think? Is that sort of the family, that connection? Is that what you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, Andrew, you could touch on this a ton. I think one of the big things that we do when we bring someone new to the community is that we tell them, hey, welcome to the family. And I think ultimately that's what people are seeking, is connection. Why are these artists in the first place? Well, they're just trying to connect at a deeper level with themselves and with those around them. And I think that's what artists are ultimately trying to find when they get connected with a group or a community or a collective, as Andrew had mentioned, is they're just trying to find connection with other people that align with their beliefs, their passions, the way they see the world, and so on. And they want to be involved in an environment where they could share their personal beliefs and not feel judged about it, right? And what's interesting is that each person, contributes their story, and that contribution plays a big part of what the entire community is all about, right? Each person wanting to seek that connection that they're not getting back at home or within their current friend groups or their current communities that they might be involved in, and be able to come here and say, hey, I have something to fall back on. I have a family here that actually cares about me, and what makes us really great in being a community is that we're not competing against anybody else, right? So we have people coming in from different event companies, different collectives, different, DJ groups and so on. And they're all able to be a part of these different groups and then contribute that to the community as well and grow it. So when we talk about the culture shift, I think that's really the power that what's happening here is that we're slowly seeping in culturally, right? And allowing ourselves to keep that flexibility is just bring in more stories. And that's all this is. It's just a connection hub.
And it's like authenticity, right? That's what resonates, I think.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It's so needed too, especially in the creative community, which can be very lonely. People come from, especially on the West Coast, people will come from all over the country and find themselves starting a new life, trying to find a way as an artist, and it can be very lonely. So to have a place where you can call home or get support is so powerful. I think that's beautiful, and it's a very strong foundation to have that purpose and that ability to make connection for people. Now, to go back to what kind of brought you guys together was the get gigs, right? So what's the strategy in getting members? How do you grow the members? Is this an area you guys are focused on, or is it more about impact, or both? Which of these two are like consuming your time now the most?
Honestly, I think in the beginning, it was just trying to get as many people to be a part of the community as possible by just reaching out, doing basic networking. But I feel like as we've progressed and grown as a community, it's more about getting to know who this person really is and what they can bring of value into our community before we want them to just be a part of it. Like when you're a part of Awaken Radio, it means something to me. So it should mean something to you as well. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of this higher, you're aligned by higher purpose is what like you're looking for right now when you're doing this sort of process of involving people in the community, right? You want to make sure that they're aligned with what you guys believe in.
And it's what's interesting, Steve, on that is that what we found is that there are a lot of individuals looking for higher purpose. So it's not like we have to go out there and sell ourselves. These individuals come to us naturally by events that we attend ourselves. As Andrew mentioned, and DJing and producing in general, networking is so important. But we're not out there trying to acquire more members. Are just coming in, they're meeting with us, and when they're looking for that higher purpose, when we talk about connection support, they're bought in. When we throw in the words of family, when we bring up family, and they see how we're all interacting with one another, they want to be a part of that. That's really what drives those individuals. And then on another note, it's communicating and articulating that on social media, showing people our events and how we all interact with each other, and so on. We get some individuals that reach out via social media or on our website. They'll go ahead and give their Instagram handles and so on, but then we'll have that conversation. We're not just letting anyone into the community. There's a little bit of a conversation that needs to be had to make sure there's an alignment, because there are those who will just jump in there for the purpose of spamming and just, just trying to get people to come and support them. And that's it, they're out. But once individuals get the culture, they know what they're getting themselves into. This is a very different environment. It's not what they've gotten used to.
So it's like a lot of word of mouth, a lot of online marketing, and then maybe some of your events that you're doing. Is that how you guys are building it?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of word of mouth, a lot of online content. The content's everything. Yeah.
But the conversations reminding me of a book I read a long time ago, was choosing your customers. How, whether you're a movement or a company, it's very tempting to just grab anyone who's willing to be part of it and pay you money, right? Or join a membership. We can talk about that in just a bit, whether there's membership fees and things like that. But I do love the fact that you guys didn't get tempted by that and decide, hey, we want to have some standards. We want to create a community that's living by certain purpose principles. And so you have to sometimes throttle back and say, okay, who fits into this community? I think there's a lot to be said about that. But even with that, there's always the challenge, outreach. How do you measure that success of building a community like this? Is it, what does it look like to say we're winning? If it's not the numbers, if it's the quality, what would be like we are succeeding at building this community? What would you guys say that's your primary success measurement, if you will?
Hey, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I honestly think that we don't really know what's going to measure our success as of now. Like, I don't think we know what we need to feel successful with what we've done. I think that we're just kind of taking it step by step, and with whatever happens, if it's a win, it's a win. If it's a loss, it happens. It's the way of life.
No, to touch on that, in an ideal world, and this is just being realistic, right? We have measured success based on how many people we've been able to gather that align with our values in one place, right? And ultimately, I can imagine that in that one day when we have a high volume of individuals that align with our values all in one place through an event, we could look back at that and be like, hey, that's a measurement of success, right? But ultimately, to get to that point, we have to understand that there's so much more to give back to this community, to the space, right? And the space is not just Awaken Radio Club, it's the entire music space. Let's just say we're starting off in LA, creeping into Vegas, a little bit of New York, so on and so forth, and slowly but surely. One of the things that, we did run into that question of like, hey, rapid growth versus, building our roots. What is the best plan? And interestingly enough, we threw in some crazy ideas. I had some crazy ideas. At one point, we started building a community. We have actually a connection with a group of artists out in Italy. And I had the wild idea of like, hey, you guys are already throwing massive events out there and you want to be a part of our community as well. So you have a connection to the States. What if we just open the door to a lot of your Italian fans that you already have? As I threw out the crazy idea, because again, in my mind, we're thinking growth, but the idea of like, oh, well, then we're going to be diluting our community with a bunch of individuals who are probably just looking for a night out, or looking to follow a group of people, or just want to be, we don't know what that would look like. The control of keeping the culture and the goals of the culture would then dilute. And it wasn't until I saw something on Instagram. It was, I forget what his first name is, but I think Chesky is his last name. He's the gentleman who founded Airbnb. And there was a video he was being interviewed. And the question he was asked was, or I think it was the venture capitalist that invested in Airbnb. He was being mentored by this gentleman, and it was Paul Graham that was mentoring him. And Paul said, hey, you don't want to grow Airbnb super fast. Focus on the few hundred individuals you have on the platform and build on that platform. Have those hundreds of people absolutely love your platform, so much so that they can't stop talking about it. That should be your focus. And that's what Airbnb did. So one of
there's a thing about that where it's about the consumption experience in marketing, right? Ash, this is like, I'm experiencing this and there's emotions involved in that. And if you can win that consumption experience, that's where they become your advocates, your ambassadors, your brand ambassadors. They're doing the marketing for you at that point, right?
And to answer that, yes, because the question that was asked of one of the users of Airbnb was like, hey, how many people have you shared or talked about Airbnb with? And that specific customer was like, every day, every 5, 10, 15 minutes, every friend I know, I'm telling about Airbnb. They said, now that I think about it, probably 50 to 100 people I'm telling about Airbnb. So to relate that back to us, I had a conversation with the DJ last night. He calls me and said, Ash, I am so passionate about Awaken. I want to see this, go to the moon. I want to see this go different places. I love what you guys have done, and I want to just take it all the way with you. And where that was coming from him was that he was all alone back prior to meeting Awaken. He had shared that, hey, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was alone, and now I met you guys, and you guys are family. So that's an example of that person.
Well, that's the thing. I think what's beautiful about this is your North Star is not the metrics for trying to drive membership towards a goal of just growth for the sake of growth, right? Because sometimes it could be completely ego driven and say, I want to build a community of 1 million people, what for, right? But you guys are making a difference in people's lives. And I think you're discovering that along the way. You knew that. That's why your intention was. But as you begin to uncover that and you see that in comments like this person, right? Mm-hmm. Then it becomes an obligation to grow because it's something that you see so valuable for people that it becomes your mission, to actually grow it for the purpose of giving other people the opportunity to experience that same kind of a bliss. Yeah. So I feel you guys are at that stage where you know what you have, but these proof points are the moments that really are going to solidify like why we need to expand this out, because it's something that disrupts the industry, but also it's a movement. It's not just some club. It becomes a movement. So it's pretty cool to hear you guys comment about that.
Too, I love what you said, helping individuals experience their bliss. And when you said that just now, I just thought about all of the different DJs that have reached out to me and Andrew when they've had those blissful experiences, whether it's them getting on the deck for the first time and performing, or just having a place where they can call a family. A bliss is being achieved, really. So to answer your question, how do we, at this moment, how are we tracking success? Is these individual conversations we're having with members of our community and the feedback they're given. And I think there's one DJ who has, I could almost promise you, and Andrew, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think I've seen this gentleman without one of our Awaken sweaters out and about. And I believe he wears it not so much because he feels like he's a part of something big, but he's a part of that North Star. I think he wears it because he knows he's wearing something that is a part of something bigger than himself. So I think every time he puts something like that on, he feels that. And that's the feedback that, when you talk about the obligation of we don't have a choice, we now have to grow. That's the sticky situation we got ourselves in, right? There's no, hey, you know what? I'm tired of growing a community. I just want to be selfish now. It's like, no. We've made this bed and now we're going to have to sleep in it. And it's happening right now. It's like our responsibility in not just the community, but even looking at ourselves as individuals. And I'm sure Andrew could speak to this too. We talk about our own personal growth, how much our actions, our day-to-day decisions that we make and how much they affect other people. So Awaken is not just Awaken it's every individual person involved in pushing this culture change and transformation. That involves us also having to internally transform. It involves us having to have these higher conscious conversations about what we really want out of this life. Music is just one of the vessels, right? But I think ultimately there's something bigger happening here. And Steve, you touched on it, connection, right? I think there's a space for a connection that's being created. Music just happens to be a vessel, but the people we're attracting are not just musicians. We're attracting videographers and cinematographers. We're attracting individuals that like being a part of spaces that love music, and they're creating environments where they can go with groups of people and experience connections at different events together. That's creation in itself as well. Something that doesn't exist that is being created is creation. So you don't have to be a DJ or a producer to just be an artist. You being in this podcast right now, we're creating art. And as long as everyone understands that, that art is essentially something that wasn't there before, but is being created and developed, put it out into the world, whether it's done in a format of a podcast, a conversation being had with a friend, a memorable moment that will stand out for you for a long time. All of that is art. So bringing all of it together, that is the bigger picture.
All right, very serious. Let's get serious for a second.
Yeah.
Where do I get one of those shirts?
You just have to ask. I got you. Your wish is my
Let's get him a shirt.
You need some merch.
You guys are both for sure going to get a shirt. Yeah.
So, we're talking about how rewarding community building can be, but it's not without its challenges, right? What are some of the biggest obstacles you guys have encountered, and how have you overcome them? Andrew, let's go to you.
Honestly, I think the biggest challenges we face is really with our events. I feel like with our events, it's hard to pack out a house consistently, and that's what we're currently trying to figure out. But we'll end up figuring out. We'll figure it out. I know that we will. We're slowly growing, and I understand that we've only started within this last year. But I think that within this next year, 2025, we have some pretty big goals, and I'm hoping that we achieve a few of them.
Touching on events, that's just one part of what Awaken's all about. We're doing a lot of different things, and I think our hope really going into this next year is that we're not going to put that pressure of trying to throw big events for the sake of events, but rather throw things that we can do together that benefit us as individuals, right? Whether there's wellness events that we throw, something that doesn't involve needing 50 people to be in one place, but just bringing in a few members that want to come together and have that connection consistently. But to answer the question of like what are some challenges that we run into in just building a community is one thing I find that is hard is, and we haven't run into this yet, but I have seen remnants of this, is keeping people inspired to the vision, right? Keeping the inspiration going. At some point, we do live in a world where people want to see things happen faster than it typically takes to get to a certain point. So like, for example, I personally might not be nearly as worried about events because I know in time we'll get there. But the concern I do have is how do I keep individuals motivated and believing in the vision until we get to that point where they see that ideal scenario where we have a packed out house. But I think the challenge is just that it's getting people to stay aligned, right? And so far, with the individuals that have been a part of all of this, it's that hasn't been an issue. I could see that the motivation is there, but then we run into sometimes we'll bring someone new in and they maybe have a different perspective, right? And trying to keep that culture wholesome and and bring people into like, hey, this is how we think we have you align with us. Now, with that said, different perspectives are super important, but it's just keeping that. It's keeping everyone aligned. And I won't even say keep everyone. It's that, and then also on top of that, new people constantly coming in with their experiences of life, and then having to show them a new way, and hoping that doesn't get us off kilter. If that makes sense.
This is where we talk about that higher purpose being the boss, right? Where that's what everyone kind of aligns around. And that's always a challenge.
Yeah,
we
we even discussed one of those principles is being aspirational. The purpose has to be aspirational. It has to inspire people.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between managing and leading too, by the way. Leadership is about enrollment. Managing is about just keeping people doing stuff, right? So even the language, highly encourage you guys. Think more like how do you keep people enrolled versus aligned, because alignment tends to have a compliance language to it. But there's so much that can be done there. Have your members check out our show. We talk about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question I ask a lot of our guests. So it'll be a little different than usual. What role do you think love plays in community?
That's such a great question. I think it starts with love and it sprinkles down. I think the decision to not, be selfish in that very specific moment that was the awakened turning point when we really think about it, came from a place of love. I think Monty's decision to go ahead and make a completely separate group chat and throw individuals in there came from a place of love. I think without love, none of it is possible. I mean, before Andrew probably passes off to you, I'm thinking about this as it's trickling down in my head. Every decision we make when we're talking about aligning ourselves into something that's really been working for us and how everyone's accomplishing their goals is because I think we're creating a platform of love. Helping each other out is like one of the cardinal rules of love. All right. Wanting to see someone else be successful and being genuinely happy for their success, despite where you're at in life, comes from love. And I think when everyone realizes that that's all of it, no matter what's happening, we didn't have a successful event. The song I made didn't, hit the way I thought it was going to hit. Whatever. As long as we come back to that foundation that, hey, no, our only purpose here is to love one another, and we just happen to be using this vessel in this game that we're playing, vessel being music, right? Then everything else just kind of lands where it's supposed to.
Beautiful.
Andrew, how about you? What role do you think love plays in community?
I think love plays the biggest role in our community, especially ours. I mean, without it, what are we really? When you have people expressing how it feels to be a part of this family and saying how it's changed their life, you really feel the love that you have for other people. It's not all about the music. We're united through music, but at the end of the day, I care about the well-being of the artists that work with us. I care about how your day is going. I care about if you're going through mental challenges. I want to hear about all of this because, you're not only an artist that works with me, but you're my friend. And I feel like building that friendship with the people that are around us is super important, because if we're just going to events and hanging out with the same people, but you don't have any personal connection, why are we showing up?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think you brought up obligation to help make this thing grow. Now we've seen the result. And I think it's the love that is driving us. It's like the love is like, now we have a obligation towards the love we have towards the individuals they're part of this community, or the obligation we have towards love in general. That's the best way to put it, right? When you think about it, it's like, no, that is that. Like, we're being driven by love to keep this thing going.
Yeah, it's been often said that true freedom is getting to a place where you don't have a choice to do what you do because you love so much that you're driven by it so much you can't help but not do it. So it's a beautiful thing you guys are experiencing or co-creating. It's been an absolutely beautiful experience for you to share this journey with us and the story about Awaken Radio Club. I mean, your passion for building this very inclusive, creative community is really, truly inspiring. Truly.
Where can people find out more about you and any events or anything coming up?
Yeah, so you guys could follow us on social media at Awaken Radio_Club. You could also check out our website, awakenradioclub.com. In regards to events, we're actually planning all of that out for 2025. We may have something coming up in February. We're looking at the Hermosa Beach area. We're building out our residency over at the Palmilla. So we have some showcases we're throwing out there, but we're discussing some bigger events that we're planning in the upcoming months, and we'll definitely loop you in. But if you follow us on our social media and website, you'll see all that information there.
All right. Thanks again, Ash and Andrew, for joining us. Thank you to our listeners, and we will see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.